Hi everybody, my name is Boris Reitman. I will talk to you today about how to pair your device to your computer, just the way that WhatsApp does. Like this, you point your phone, you scan that QR code, and you're in business. The problem is how you gonna code this if you're a developer, right? Well, we want in that QR code to have as little as possible information because it's only a QR code. We also want forward secrecy, so if someone else snaps your QR code later, he's not going to have the decryption key to decrypt all the secret information that you're sending between your phone and your desktop. And we also want protection from shoulder surfing. So that's the evil guy, and that's the good guy, and the evil guy can scan that QR code. That's me, yeah, that's right. Good. That's right. Well, to be a good security guy, you have to be a good hacker. So then what you do is you're going to show your own contacts instead of your friend contacts if you scan the QR code as a hacker. And there are no phone numbers in WhatsApp, so you can impersonate all the contacts. Just pick the same names. You can phish the person. So what can we improve on WhatsApp? Can we improve on it? Yeah, we should use one-time password. Show the one-time password in the phone. And what's the difference between the real person and an attacker? Both stand and scan the code. What's the difference between them? Only the good guy has access to the physical keyboard. So we're going to get the good guy to type the code on the physical keyboard. All right. We also want forward secrecy, right? We don't want anyone else who has a QR code to decrypt all that information going backward. And we're going to use Diffie-Hellman exchange to do this. Now, there are two kinds of Diffie-Hellmans that's popular. One is based on RSA, which you all know. But this one is elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. You may not have seen it before. And here we see XY coordinate, which is the public key, and the other XY coordinate, which is the other public key being exchanged, right? This is your phone, this is your laptop, they are exchanged. And the symmetric key is calculated from the two public coordinates and a secret scalar. It works according to this formula. You can see these slides later on for details. But at the end of the day, we're going to encode that XY coordinate in the QR code. By the way, we're also going to encode the channel ID in the QR code so that when the phone talks to the laptop, he's going to say what channel he wants to talk to. So it's easy to find the communication pathways. All right, so this is the whole protocol. We have this elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman first between the phone and the laptop. After that, both sides can make a symmetric key. Then the laptop is going to encrypt the one-time password with a symmetric key. We're going to send it to the phone. The phone is going to display it to the user. The user is going to look at it and going to type it in. Last thing I said, we need to minimize data. We don't want the QR code to have too much data to encode it so that those little squares will be large, right? Otherwise, you'll have to make your whole QR code very large, take your whole screen. Well, each of these coordinates, X and Y, is 32 bytes long. It's already a huge improvement over RSA keys, which are much, much longer. But even here, we have 64 bytes, which is binary. And what happens if you want to put it into the QR code and someone else with somebody else's QR code scanner scans it, it gets binary? Well, I tried it, I crashed my phone because QR code is not supposed to have a binary. It's supposed to have a nice looking URL. So if we encode this in base 64 to have it in ASCII, it becomes even more, it becomes about 90 bytes, which makes the QR code large, plus we want to have the channel ID in there. So can we simplify this so that it takes less space? Well, this is the elliptic curve, the P256 elliptic curve, using which you can implement this Diffie-Hellman exchange. And this is the parabola in x is equal to y squared. So if we just have the x coordinate, we substitute it into the parabola, we get y squared out of it. But we need y. We don't need y squared, we need y. So can we calculate the square root? Because we're plugging it into calculator. Well, remember, this whole thing is mod p. That's not normal algebra. This is weird algebra, mod P algebra. So it's not so easy to calculate that square root given y squared. And here we're going to use this thing from your group theory course that you've probably forgotten. This, you take a number to the power of p minus 1 over 2, you're going to get 1 or minus 1. Of course, it has to be mod p, right? You use the thing and you raise y squared to the power of p plus 1 over 4, pops out y out of that thing. So you don't ever have to do a real square root. Just do this trick. Of course, for this, the prime number that you're using should be divisible to have this p plus 1 over 4 should be an integer. Is it? Well, the prime number chosen for that group is specifically chosen for this purpose. And it's bunch of powers of 2 minus 1. So we add 1, definitely divisible by 4. So we're in business. We can do that. So in the end, we're going to get a compressed coordinate. X value is 32 bytes long. And we just need to encode the sign of y, because minus y times minus y is also y squared. So is it plus y or minus y? So we need to encode the sign. So overall, it's just 32 bytes and 1 bit that we need. So we cut down half of it. If you don't want to do it, you can also use the X25519 elliptic curve, which is a more recent development. It's not supported by the browser natively. You'd have to include some JavaScript libraries. But it doesn't use any y coordinates. The whole math is based on x coordinates. How can it work? Well, you know, the elliptic curve is symmetric, right, over x-axis. So the value of y is always the same. It's difference by one sign, plus or minus. So this guy, David Menstein, he figured out how to do this curve. And no y coordinate in all the calculations. So you can use that. So that's your choice. Use P256, which is natively supported by a web browser, or use this one, but then you have to include some libraries. This is how you would do it with JavaScript with P256. Use this generate key, get the key compressed, transfer, decompress, like I described, then use the other function to derive the key out of the public part and private part that you have. Since this is a Ruby meetup, this is how you do this in Ruby. On the other end, right? Use the OpenSSL gem. Same thing. Call this function, get an object. The public key parameter is what you want to send, but of course you want to compress it like I described. Transfer, receive, decompress, and that's it. Then plug it into the DH compute key function. If you want to do 25519 curve, just use these modules from GitHub. And this is the kind of stuff that I discuss in my meetup group, internet security and privacy. Welcome to bye-bye.
Thank you. Any questions for Boris? All right, thanks, Boris. Oh, one question.
Hi, thank you for your talk. And I was thinking, I like your idea of one-time password, but that's going to impact the user because he has to scan the QR code, then wait and enter one-time password. Do you think this kind of solution could be used by, for example, WhatsApp? What is going people to think about it? Are they willing to put into a one-time password into WhatsApp?
WhatsApp actually makes claims over security. It's not just some kind of chat application that is fun to use with smiley faces. They actually say we are end-to-end encrypted. I mean, it happened by chance because the guy implemented Signal and got them to implement it. But now that they have it, they say this information is end-to-end encrypted. So if they are claiming this kind of level of security, they should put the extra effort to make secure over this simplest attack, shoulder surfing. Many people do this in the coffee shops. This is just a chat application. This is not a business document. People know they have to open at work only. But they do it in coffee shops. And if I wanted to target someone specifically, I could very easily impersonate them. So it's a minor addition. I don't think anyone will bother to type that one-time password.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stefanni. I've been participating in the meetup for a while, but this is my first time here. So I'm excited to share some tips and learnings with you. And I'm going to talk a little about how you can grow, um, as a junior developer, so you can become a good intermediate or senior developer. So I'm going to talk a little about embracing complexity, practicing, finding mentors, learning the fundamentals, helping others, and I also added a bonus slide for the other junior developers that are here too. So when I was learning how to code, I found this quote, and at the time I was like, what are you talking about? For me, it's so hard to try to make the computer understand. So even now I still have to learn how to write a good code. So I started to realize that as developers, we have those two sides where we have to balance. Because at the same time that you have to learn also good practices like design patterns or clean code and etc. At the same time, you also have to learn how to be practical. Um, because hopefully someone is paying for your job. So they want to have something to use at the end. And that makes some people question, like, is a software developer some sort of crafts person? I'm not 100%, I don't agree with that 100%. But what I'm trying to say here is that if you just focus, like for example, on the first side, you will just be a code monkey. You know, someone will have to tell you what to do. But also, if you just focus here, you will be impossible to work in a team. So you have to balance this, and that's why, for me, developing systems is like a really, really complex task. Um, but everyone here survived that or is surviving, so it's okay. And how do you become a good software developer? Well, you do that by practicing a lot, and you must do that as much as you can, as you possibly can. But you might be doing all of that. Oops, sorry, I jumped one slide. Okay, so my advice here is just don't rely only on some articles and tutorials, um, because you will learn just isolated stuff. And instead, I would say try to do some practical courses or book tutorials. They will help you how to understand how to use that tool and why are they used to. And also you can start replicating some projects that you use. So it can be anything, it doesn't matter, as long as you are using that to practice what you are learning. And then you can repeat that for any new tool that you want to learn. But then you might be doing all of that wrong. And it's not because you are not good enough, it's just because you don't have the tools expertise yet. And that's why, for me, I think it is really, really important to have a mentor, because they can help you understand what goes beyond the lines of code that you are writing. You know? As a software developers, we know that we don't write code 100% of the time. So having a mentor can help you with that. And yeah, and then the mentors can help you here how to identify what are those fundamentals for you. So for example, if you want to learn Ruby on Rails, you must know Ruby first, and you must know other programming concepts before that. And the mentor can be really useful in with that. And you can also help others. Unfortunately, we think that you must be a senior to help others, or I don't know, give talks. I'm not a senior, so you can do that. And for me, in fact, if you start doing that since the beginning, we will become a better professional later. You will be a better asset for the community. And as the bonus, I have here some books, and Ruby Tapas is a really good, it's like Rails casts. But the book here that for me was the most useful is Apprenticeship Patterns. And I would recommend this book not just for junior developers, but for everyone. And I also have this reading list on my blog. I asked some more experienced people than I to recommend some books. So you might want to check it out. And to end, I wanted to finish with this quote from Apprenticeship Patterns. It's a little long, sorry, but I feel like as a community, we must discuss the industry problems. So I wanted to finish with this talk. And here I end my first talk. Thank you. Okay, so no need to introduce myself again, but I'm go- so I've been using system tests for a while now, and I thought it would be nice to share with you. So I'm going to uh, discuss a little why to use them, how to use it, and the examples that I will show you are made with Minitest and not RSpec, and just a quick video at the end. So why use system tests? So system tests were made for us to use to test our application has a full and complete and integrated system. And it allows us to test our app as if a real user were interacting with it. Um, so before the Rails test, you would have to, if you wanted to test JavaScript, you would have to manually configure that. I mean, we know how boring that can get. So with new Rails applications, it already can come installed with all of the requirements, so you just have to start writing them. So here is an example of a really new Rails app, 5.2, I guess. And you can see that it comes already with some configurations. Another reason is that it's just like writing a normal Capybara test. And for those who don't know, Capybara is a tool that allows you to test your application using a browser. So, and that's why system tests relies entirely on Capybara. Another thing that I find it really useful is that you can set different screen sizes for your test. So if you have a different behavior in mobile or desktop, it's really easy to test that. And here's an example of a project that I'm currently working on. What we do is we set the Rake test as the default driver. And then for the tests that we want to test JavaScript only, we enable that. And the reason why is because when you're testing JavaScript, it will open a browser. So it will take a bit more longer than the normal tests. And then Rake test is way, way more faster. And this is my favorite, is that when you're having your tests failing, it takes the screenshots for you. And that is also, I think. And I'm going to show a little, just a small video that I made to show you. Sorry. I don't know, it's not going full screen. But we have to add this additional system flag. And the reason is why, because it takes a little longer, they didn't put them together with the normal Rails tests. So it starts a driver, open a browser. Yeah, so it's just a quick example of how the user would behave, like being able to place an order with a website. And, oops. Oh, yeah. I don't know what happened. Oh, okay, and this is a video of Aileen. She was the person responsible for implementing system tests. And on this talk, she also talks about contributing to the Rails core team. So it might be, I don't know, good to check it out. And that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Hello. So I actually wasn't planning to talk today, but why not? Um, I gave this talk in another meetup before, so pardon me if I haven't actually practiced. I just thought about this now. So I'm gonna be talking about demystifying Git. Um, when I presented this, I was gonna talk about Git in a different way, but someone else stole my idea. Well, not really stole my idea, but he was doing the same thing. So I was like, oh, okay. So let's revamp it. My name is Paulo Ancheta. You can find me everywhere with that handle. And I work here at Unbounds. That's our team last CTA, I think. And we make landing pages here. So that's me. When I am not coding, I go to the beach and enjoy. That's just it in Indonesia. And okay, demystifying Git. So what is Git? Git is like playing a game, but it's saving your game in multiple endpoints, and each point is a Git commit. So it's really confusing, but what is Git actually? So the best thing about Git was this part, which actually was written by Linus on Git in GitHub. So if you git blame, that's what he wrote. I'm not gonna read it. So I think of Git as Legos. If you think about Legos, or if you think about the whole program in a company as a big Lego structure, each Lego piece is a commit, then that makes sense for me, I think. So if you think about the whole Batman vehicle and then each piece is a commit, then it kind of works as an illustration for it. So it consists of small pieces. Each piece is extensible. Each piece is easily torn apart and immutable. But did I skip? Okay, so in Git, there's Git objects, and there's 5 different things of Git objects. For some reason, in my research, I saw none. A Git object can be none. I'm not sure why, but a Git object can be blob, tree, commit, or a tag. So Git object type blob, and then if you type hello world and you pass it to a hash object, which is a plumbing command, and it will actually spit out that hash with that tree, and you can see it from your .git folder. And then you can cat the file, and you will see what's the size, or what the type is, or what the printout of the blob is. And it's actually what you see on the status, which is pretty cool. You can update the index and you add the byte size, or no, it's some type of code of 1064. I think if you have a different executable file, it will have a different hash. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I've given this talk. And then if you type hello world, hello text, or yeah, hello text, it will add the file even without manually adding the file. So a tree is just recording. If you write the tree, git write tree, it just records the whole thing as it just takes a snapshot of it, and it creates a hash of that tree. And the commit, it has an author, date, tree, SHA, and the commit message. I'm just going to skip all here and talk about why I'm talking about this. Anyway, now let's use Ruby, because this is a Ruby meetup. I actually made a gem called fake git because I was trying to learn what makes git, and I wrote it in Ruby. So my thing was to use fake git init, which should work exactly as git init repo would create your own repo. And then I just parsed everything from a standard in, because hash object is a standard in and you can pass commands. I made a shortcut to just call everything here, and I can just call different modules from there. And then I constantize the strings that I call, pass it on, and then that's how I call each module that I create. Next. And then for hash object, I just create a hash. Doesn't really matter what, because I didn't really know what's the reason why they did it, but I just pass it as a hash. And then private okay, so I create my own Git object as a Ruby object. And in here, so in there, line 6, I use an attribute accessor. One of the Rails main contributor actually tweeted me about it and said, well, you should be using reader because you're not using accessor. But I did this whole fake Git repository in probably about 6 hours just to make my own talk. So I was like, eh. So if you look at the original Git, that's what you would get. And it's just one big blob. A few months later, I found out that it's just hashed in some type of hashing algorithm. Maybe I'll try to find it again. But for the storage, I just had a key value format, and this is how I made my format. Just simple key value store, same thing as a hash. And I think I parse it as a hash as well. And I have list object. Git has a list object, so you can have all the objects and then they sort it after. So that's how I try to make my own objects. Just have a collection, have an array of all the objects, pass all the Git objects in, and then I'll sort it after. And that's how you do the Git, what was it? Show? No, yeah, Git show. And then I update the index, kind of similar to how fake or the original Git did it, but in Ruby, not in C. And then I have a log, which I have just, once I list out all my Git objects as a collection, I just sort it out by the date. And that's how I destroyed magic. And that's me. Thank you.
Hi, this is Tips of the Rake. So I'm Weston. I'm from a very small agency called NetSign. We're a group of full stack web devs. We build modern web apps for desktop, mobile, and augmented reality. So Tips of the Rake, not this rake. We are going to walk through this talk as if we have a task to do. We're going to start a project. We are going to create a rake file to handle a couple of everyday tasks you would do with your DB. And then we're going to see what sort of problems pop up. Okay, so how many people here use Postgres with Rails all the time? Okay, that's pretty much everybody. So you've probably seen this. If you ever try to drop your DB, but you're still connected to it. So you have PSQL terminal open, or your Rails app is running, or maybe both. They're both going to prevent you from actually dropping your DB if you do rake DB drop or rake DB migrate reset or something like that. You want to rebuild everything from scratch. So you Google around for a solution, and maybe you come up with this. I found this on Google. It's a really great trick to disconnect, drop all connections to Postgres through Rake. And then you can do this. So now you've created a new Rake task called disconnect, and you can run it in front of DB drop, and it will drop the task. But disconnect is not really the right name. You really want to call that, put that in the same namespace. So here's tip number 1. You can organize your Rake tasks with namespaces. And the fact that you have to call Rake DB disconnect and then Rake DB drop feels a little bit verbose, because Rake has this really nice syntax where you can do this, where you can add a requirement in front of the drop task, which comes from Rails. And now you call your task automatically, and you can just call Rake DB disconnect in one step. So now you've written that task. Every time you run Rake DB drop or Rake DB migrate reset or anything like that, it will just work, drop all the connections. Now, if you're on PSQL, you're going to have to just hit it twice to reconnect. All right, so now let's say that was your rake task. You got a new task, which is to load data into your database from a file. So this is just a very simple rake task, not doing anything too special. You'll notice now that I'm calling db drop, so it's using that other task. But the other thing I'm doing is I'm connecting to the current database. So I just wanted you to see this current database variable because we use that in our db disconnect already. So we've got some duplication of code here, and that's always bad, right? So that's what current database looks like. So what we might want to do is we might want to create a method here and refactor that out in our rake task. So it might look like this, right? You've got a namespace, you've got a method out there, and now you can reuse that method in 2 different tasks. However, this would be not good because it works, but now you've created a global method, right? And it's not just like it's everywhere, it's off main, right, in the base of your Ruby code. Now, you're generally not loading your rake tasks in your Rails app, but still inside of any code that you're running inside of Rake, you've got a sort of a global method, which you want to avoid. This is a bad idea. So one thing you could do is you could create a module, and this gives you some cleanliness because you can wrap everything around with that, and then you can include DB helper inside your rake task. But now you've got a global module. You've just kind of maybe wrapped up a bunch of methods into a new thing that's now polluting the global namespace. So this is a nice, tidy little trick if you've got a one-liner. So if you've got something that you would normally use as a method, but you don't want to pollute the global namespace, you can create an inline proc. So now instead of using current database as a method that gets you the value, you can create an inline method essentially, and do that as a variable inside of your rake task. This will not pollute the global namespace. So this is an improvement. But however, notice now we've got duplication back again, right? We want to use that little proc in 2 different places. So now we've got the duplication back. So what are we going to do? So that's not good. This is the thing that blew my mind. Rake comes with an amazing DSL. So that line 2 there, Rake DSL is what I really want you to pay attention to. And it's not very well known, and it allows you to do something like this. It has a really nice DSL built in where when you define your initialize method, you can basically cut and paste your existing rake tasks into that initialize method, which is kind of hurts your brain a little bit because it's this strange Jim Waring, God rest his soul, crazy code that's really cool. But now you basically move your rake tasks in there. But what I can't show you without doing a little bit of scrolling is now I can create private methods. Ooh. And now current database is a nicely encapsulated method inside of a class called DB tasks. Now that last step in the bottom there I've flagged as important because I do this all the time. I forget to call DB tasks new. But when you call DB tasks new, what it'll do is it'll generate those rake tasks and populate them inside of your normal rake task hierarchy so that when you type rake -T and want to list all your rake tasks, they'll show up just like regular rake tasks, but now nicely encapsulated inside of classes. And then you can even take it one step further. Now that trick that you used before maybe of, let's say you have a bunch of different rake tasks and you want to use that current database method now across multiple rake tasks, you can do this class encapsulation, and then you see line 3, now include that in as a module. And now everything is nice and clean. That is tips of the rake. Thank you. I'm Weston. You can find me at Thermistar. We are NetSign.